where do you start in terms of just sort of putting together the handful of names, the bucket, so to speak, non-Sherrone Moore category for the Michigan job?
The Brian Kelly rumors have been out there, but I don't have any actual reason to believe them. Obviously, Lance Leipold at Kansas. Maybe not obviously, because I'm not sure how many folks follow his journey, but he did coach in Michigan for quite a while. So I think you could see him potentially if it's not Sherrone Moore. But I think every name that we bring up here, it is couched with the if it's not Sherrone Moore, because I think all of us sort of expect that it would be Sherrone Moore. He's a proven winner, and I think he'd probably do pretty damn well at Michigan, at Leipold, that is. So if I wasn't going to hire Sherrone Moore, I think that's who I would go get.
Interesting list from ESPN's Pete Thamel. Sherrone Moore is the favorite to replace Jim Harbaugh. Other names: Lance Leipold, Chris Kleiman, and Dave Clawson. He adds a note here: Matt Rule and Luke Fickell have been considered amid past Harbaugh flirtations with the NFL. I wonder if they would not be, just based on the timing, right? I mean,
if you're Fickell and they call you say Wisconsin, peace, right? And Matt Rule as well. That's a much better job.
Yeah, I know. But go ahead, Tom.
I was going to say, but speaking of Wisconsin, just one minor correction. Leipold coached in Wisconsin. He didn't coach in Michigan.
Oh, excuse me. Oh, DeBoer. I was thinking like the two guys that came up from the lower ranks. DeBoer did, right?
DeBoer did. Brian Kelly did.
Right. He was Wisconsin Whitewater?
Yeah, he was a Wisconsin Whitewater.
Okay, that's right. Okay.
Which, I mean, it's Michigan. It's just on the other side of the lake.
It's all cold and near the lake.
Yeah, it's cold up there. Sorry about that, guy.
Tom, what about you? Like, what were you think? You sort of teased. You were like, it might be a,
No, I'm not trying to tease any specific. I'm just saying I feel like if it's not Sherrone Moore, the only reason it wouldn't be is because there's some giant unexpected kind of like grand slam swing that they took and they hit on. Like, I think Moore is very much likely to be the coach, but if it were a Brian Kelly or a Luke Fickell or a Matt, you know what I mean? Just something to that extent. So I think it'll be Moore. I don't think it'll be Urban Meyer. I don't think it'll be Bill Belichick. I think Lance Dion. Yes, it could be Dion. Yes.
For content, we want Urban.
For content, first of all, I can't even do that. I've done Urban Meyer for almost every prominent job that has come open. But the man who has the infamous Pint House named after his record against Michigan.
Yes.
Yeah.
Can't do that.
And that's why I really don't know if Luke Fickell would take the job either, because that runs deep. And I don't know if Luke Fickell would really want to, betray. But the thing with Leipold is we know he's a great coach. We know he's a great developer. But is he the coach that you want for a Michigan, like a team coming off of a national title? Like, Michigan does not have top 5 recruiting classes every single year. But would you want to bring in somebody like that who might not have the kind of recruiting chops that you're looking for to continue competing at that level, especially now that the way things are going as far as the Power 2 and the playoff expanding?
I think it's interesting. A great candidate for Michigan, if I was just to take a step back, it's the guy who just accepted the job in Tuscaloosa. And to go back to, like Bud's sliding doors of all the weird timing of this, like Nick Saban's retirement and Jim Harbaugh leaving for the NFL. When we go back and we crystallize this coaching carousel, they will be included, but they happened at very different times with very different context. And Kalen DeBoer would have been a great candidate for this job. He just took the job at Alabama a couple weeks ago, so it ain't going to happen. So I would I don't have any other names necessarily to add to this. What if like Mike Vrabel took it? Ohio State guy, that ain't going to happen.
Also hilarious.
Yeah.
But also
hilarious.
hilarious.
Also hilarious. But another coach too, like you mentioned, DeBoer just took the Washington job. The guy who replaced DeBoer at Washington spent 2 years coaching at Michigan. Jed Fish. So you
can't do that. You fundamentally you can't do that, right? All right.
It's Nick Saban.
Is Charles Woodson in coaching right now? So I'm looking at the chat. They're like, they need to hire Charles Woodson to replace Mike Mentor. I was like, I don't.
Has Charles ever coached?
I'm just glad that other fan bases do this too. Like when I do Nolecast, like, what about this former player who has no coaching experience at all? Like he could be the next coordinator. I'm like,
what about Mike McDonald? Do you think that Mike McDonald would come back and be head coach?
No. Mike McDonald's going to be an NFL head coach here soon.
Okay.
In fact, if the Ravens didn't get to the Super Bowl or the AFC Championship, he'd be already interviewing for places. But, yeah.
I think we very much have
Tom Brady. Somebody in the chat just said, sure, yeah, Tom Brady.
All right, let's set the ground rules. If it is Sherrone, it's not an emergency pod. We'll just discuss. Like if they announce Sherrone tonight or early tomorrow morning, we're just going to hit it on Thursday's show.
Yes.
Okay.
The news,
if it's like Brian, if it is Brian Kelly for some reason, which I don't think it will be.
Well, the other thing about promoting Sherrone Morris is it closes the loop.
Yeah.
If you take Brian Kelly, now guess what? Now we've got an LSU job.
Open again.
If he takes Steve Sarkisian, now we've got a Texas job and $500 to Tom.
How much do you think that the player exodus that we saw from Alabama and to some extent Washington plays into the thinking of Michigan's admin here? Because if you are this late in the coach game, you get that 30-day window to open. Now, granted, Bama mistimed the heck out of this because a lot of schools still had an enrollment window open, whereas now for a lot of schools, like it's got to be real quick, man. It's hard to get kids in now at this point. You can still get it. There's still a couple, but it is fairly difficult at many places. So, like, does that factor in, or because it's so late in the game, do they realize like kids, whoever you hire is going to have what, like 14 weeks before the spring window opens to kind of get to know these guys?
I think it factors in a little. I think as does the academic year, where you can kind of say that it won't have as large of an impact. But I don't think Michigan is quite the same situation as like Alabama and Washington, because Michigan is Michigan. Alabama is Alabama, but Nick Saban is bigger than Alabama, if that makes sense. So like we talked about a lot, like with the NIL and stuff, a lot of the kids were going there to play for Nick Saban. I think a lot of kids go to Michigan because they want to go to Michigan. And then Washington is just a completely different situation where the entire team was graduating anyway, and then the coaching staff leaves as well. So
I think that's probably true. Yeah. The draw of Michigan as a school is greater than the draw of Alabama as a school. If you remove the coach. Yeah, I think that's probably true.
I think that it would be irresponsible not to give Sherrone Moore an advantage if you thought for sure, based on your conversations with everybody, that him sticking around would be the linchpin in holding the key pieces of the roster together for 2024. A roster that's already going to lose 12 NFL draft picks.
Roughly, yeah.
I mean, more. My bet would be double digits. You give me 10.5, I'm taking the over. And while they are bringing some back, I think that this is going to be, like you mentioned, a roster that while their recruiting rankings might be one thing, I bet you if 24/7 Sports Transfer Portal team has to re-rank a lot of these guys, they're going to have better rankings than they did coming out of high school, just because the player development, both in terms of like the physical side and the teaching side, have just produced better players at Michigan. I mean, it's been really, really good player development, something we've talked about a lot on here. So yeah, I would give Sherrone Moore, if we were putting together a score, like a candidate algorithm, I would boost Sherrone Moore's rankings if I did truly believe that keeping him was going to help keep the roster together. And I believe it would probably give you a better chance than if you did an outside hire.
The one thing to look for here is, and you can message internally regardless of whether you make it official. Like you could have no cell phones meeting, but it's Sherrone guys type thing.
Right.
Some state schools require the job to be like posted or listed or whatever it is for a certain number of days. So I don't know what Michigan state laws are on that. And I mean, as the head coach, you can probably get something.
You could probably get a waiver through, especially because it's Michigan. But it's another factor to consider here too is like Nick Saban probably wasn't sharing with his roster that he was retiring. Kalen DeBoer wasn't sharing with his roster that, hey, if Alabama comes open, I'm out the door. Jim Harbaugh to the NFL rumors have been a constant for years. They were sitting at the press conference after the title game, JJ McCarthy and Harbaugh gets asked about the NFL at the conference, and McCarthy starts cracking up because they all knew this was a possibility. They've discussed it. It's been open. So I feel like if guys had ideas to transfer or go to the NFL because Harbaugh was leaving, they've already made that decision.
Man, if it's Sherrone, think about wasn't he pretty heavily considered for Purdue and now a year later you're a national champion and you could be the head coach of Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're going to get rich either way, but like, one, you have a much better shot of coaching there for more than 4 or 5 years.
It's a good gig.
I bet you. I bet you Sherrone Moore.
Spread.
I bet you Sherrone Moore is going to look back at those series of decisions that were made in that coaching cycle. He's gonna be very happy with how it worked out.